producing this particular statement or this particular model?
Yes, thank you, Arwen, and good morning, everyone. Can I reiterate? I thought that what we've just heard from Nicola and Claire, I think does a superb job of trying to translate what at first sight can seem quite intimidating into a process that allows all of us as teachers just to engage in a logical thought process that's designed to produce rich learning for young people, learning that will challenge them appropriately and will allow them to progress as they move through. So when we think about a high-level curriculum statement, I just can't stress strongly enough how important it is for everyone to take time to make sense of the elements in the new curriculum, because there's a lot of new terminology there. There's a lot of different elements there. And at first sight, that can look quite intimidating. But I think both Nicola and Claire have shown how you can use that framework in order to arrive at something which is going to allow young people to have that kind of rich learning experience and to progress in their learning. So I think the first thing about high-level curriculum statement is that we need to be able to illustrate how the flow of learning is going to take place within the school as young people move, both within a given year and through the years. So that notion of the relationship, which we've just been talking about, the relationship between the what matters statements, the progression steps, the descriptions of learning, the principles of progression, as I say, which at first sight can appear this can appear quite technical. It shouldn't be technical. This is designed, I think, in order to allow people, teachers, to use their skills to create the kind of rich learning that young people, we want young people to engage in. So if you feel at the end of the day what you're producing is a highly technical document, we've probably got this wrong. It ought to be a document which speaks to yourselves about the way in which you're going to approach this in order to create the kind of flow that's required. So I think one of the things that needs to happen in the high-level statement is to illustrate how you are going to establish that relationship between areas of learning, the what matters statements, the progression steps, and how you're using the principles of progression to ensure that young people move forward in their learning. And in essence, that's the single most important thing about all of this. In essence, that's what really matters. And therefore, the two presentations which we've just had are right at the heart, I think, of allowing you to produce that high-level statement, because they illustrate at the end of the day where you're going to with this. So the high-level statement should create the context within what we've just heard from Nicola and Claire can actually happen in relation to the curriculum as a whole. I think we've got to be careful about assumptions. So be careful when you've got your high-level curriculum design statement that you don't slip back into assumptions that come from where we've been rather than where we're trying to get to with the curriculum. And again, I think both made this very clear. This is not assessment driven. We've essentially had a curriculum hitherto which was strongly assessment driven. So the way we were designing learning was to get to levels and to assess young people as to where they got to those levels. This is designed to be a curriculum which allows and encourages all of us to develop the kind of pedagogy, the kind of experience for young people that will allow them to progress in their learning. So number one is it's not assessment driven, and don't be very careful in high level statements that it doesn't slip back into how are we going to assess whether they've reached progression step 3? How are we going to assess? These progression steps are meant to be a guide to the way in which young people's learning will progress. It's also not a list of content. At the end of the day, the role of the what matters statements is just so important. If we think about the how this is different from a previous curriculum, if we think about young people as they move into the qualifications phase and they look back on what they've learned, what they've got from the years that precede qualifications, very often what stays with them can be almost random in some cases. Less so in some subjects, some areas like maths, where it's much more clearly a linear build-up. But in other areas of the curriculum, it can almost be random as to what stays with them as they move into the qualifications phase, and then qualifications drive their learning thereafter. And what's gone before can disappear into the ether very quickly. The critical thing about this new curriculum are those what matter statements, because they are saying the time that you've spent in school should leave you with a rich and deep understanding of those fundamental what matter statements, which will stay with you for the rest of your life. They are the essence of learning in those areas of learning and experience, and the whole way in which we approach the design is to allow the curriculum to build, to deepen and broaden their understanding using the principles of progression, become more sophisticated, so that when they move forward, that those what matter statements are the organizers that young people have in their head, with the concepts that underpin those what matter statements that will be with them for the rest of their lives. That they get it, and they've got it in a way that is much more coherent and joined up. So a high level curriculum statement has got to show the way in which progression is going to build, how you're going to do that. And there's no single model of doing that. There's different ways into this, different ways into it in different areas of learning and experience. But you've got to show what's the process by which you're going to arrive at what happens in a classroom on a day-to-day basis, but not get into the specifics of what's going to happen in a particular way. There's no right answer. It is, and again, I think both of them illustrated a thought process, which is really what we're talking about. The beauty is that the opportunity is there to work collaboratively. So some schools, and Eros, we saw that at the start, some schools had done quite a lot, other schools hadn't done very much. Well, that's great. They can learn from each other. They can build, and what one school has already done can help to inform another school. So the collaborative bit of this process is so important. The mutual learning is so important. It's not people like me. It's not experts that are going to tell you how to do that. It's colleagues working together, applying a relatively straightforward process, understanding the elements in the new curriculum, and using that as an opportunity, not as a straitjacket, but as an opportunity to design the kind of learning that we want to have for our young people. And again, it's so important that those four purposes stay with us as we do that, because very often what we do is to lose the narrative. So again, a high-level curriculum statement is going to illustrate how, in your context, those four purposes are given life, will be given life, as you think through the relationship between what matters, descriptions of learning, progression set, descriptions of learning, and assessment. It's been really interesting for me because, Successful Futures was produced back in 2015. So we're 6 years away from when Successful Futures was, and a huge amount of water has flowed under the bridge since then. So what you are now working with is not Successful Futures. What you're now working with is the way in which colleagues across Wales have taken that starting point and produced something now which they believe will allow you to produce the kind of rich learning for young people. So the single most important message that I would want to give is, see this as an opportunity. Don't see it as a technical exercise being imposed on you, which somehow or other you've got to learn a whole lot of new tricks and convince everyone that you understand how to use the new terminology. Take time to understand it. Use the kind of thinking that Nicola and Claire have put forward. Learn from colleagues, and think of the high-level curriculum statement. Try and put yourself, stand outside it, and say, if I'm looking at that, yeah, I can see how this school in this context is going to use these bits of architecture to produce really exciting learning for young people. And you can only do that if you think through those relationships. So the single most important thing in a high-level statement is showing how that relationship is going to be established between the various elements in the curriculum. I'm not sure I want to say any more on that. I mean, it's not, as I say, I'm not I'm coming at this to some extent as you are. You know, Successful Futures took it so far. I've worked with pioneer schools, and I know the way in which they've approached it. But this is what ends up is not mine. It's very much a process which has been arrived at in a whole variety of different ways. But I really think that the opportunity that the high-level curriculum statement has got to be a powerful way of enabling each school to show how it is going to take the opportunities offered by the new curriculum to produce that rich experience for young people, and that the progression in young person's learning is going to be very explicit. How are you going to achieve the progression in young people's learning? And that brings together the pedagogy, it brings together assessment, and it brings together descriptions of learning as how is that going to work together? And again, I thought Nicola in particular, where she illustrated, the opportunities in the local area to use pedagogy in order to take forward the structure that was there, was a very good example of that. So, I really, as I've said before, and sparing their blushes, I think both Nicola and Claire have done a really, really good job. And I think if people just apply the same kind of thought processes that they've done, pull back from that and think about how did they arrive at what they're doing? That's what high-level curriculum design statement should look like.
Diolch, Graham. Thanks very much, Graham. There's plenty of food for thought in flowing from Nicola and Claire's presentation to what you've shared with us there now. I think I've just written a few things down here. I think your first point about who's it for, I think that's key. So that's got to be personal and local to the school and its community, and parents as well should be understanding, this is what my child will get in this school. So the other thing, the how bit, which is in the journey to rollout, is the process of doing itself. And then I think a future conversation we need to have is how do we translate that statement then into a high-level curriculum model, which shifts us from the presence of an assessment-driven curriculum that we're so used to. And I think that's going to be an interesting debate for this group, especially the curriculum design group. It's also across the OLEs, how we shift from the direction and the vision for the school and its community and its clusters of schools in some particular examples. Then into, if we go through the levels, what is the actual detail of going down into, we're so used to schemes of work, teacher planning and so on. So we've got to that's got to be a conversation. We've got to really get into the context of the curriculum. I think another key points that you made today and you made before, this is an involvement as well, isn't it? It's not we're not looking for a revolution by September 2022, but this is involvement of understanding and experiences that we're going through. There is a danger, isn't there, that we write this statement and the initial model for an external audience, such as the inspectorates, or for schools to think that we in Grey, and I think we are in the same page as yourself. We want to see, never mind the content. If it's 30 pages long, then I've got a good curriculum statement model. Yeah, and so what would be your views on, on the level, what high level for some people? We've seen it over the, if we can cast our minds back into previous iterations of certain documents, they've started high level and then individual schools have taken on another draft and added things on, and then they become War and Peace kind of documents which nobody picks up and reads. And we've got to be wary of the inspections that people will read. If a school is judged positively, that people will pick up a statement and will try and copy that statement instead of making it very personal to their own. How would you respond to some of those comments?
Yeah, I mean, I think if the high level curriculum statement is working, and as you say, it should be accessible by different audiences. So you would really want whoever's reading it to look at it, and their reaction should be, wow, wow, that looks really great. That looks, I can see, if I'm a parent and I look at that, if my child has that experience during its time at school, that will be fantastic. So on the other hand, if it's as you say, a very long technical document that tries to bring in all the moving parts that are there, and as arrows flying all over the place in terms of the interrelationship, that may be necessary, as working documents beyond it, but that's not what you need for a high-level curriculum document. You need something that is actually should be quite inspiring, I think, as a document. It should inspire those who read it, but it should also inspire those who are creating it. And I just can't stress too strongly, if this curriculum is going to work, it will only work because we take the opportunities it offers to create really rich and exciting experiences for our young people. And it's not, as has been said a number of times, it's not an assessment driven curriculum. It's a pedagogy driven curriculum, and it's a curriculum that's not driven by the accumulation of knowledge in terms of facts. It's a curriculum that's driven by depth of conceptual understanding, which encompasses lots of facts, but it's not the facts that we're going to assess at the end of the day. It's the extent to which within those what matter statements and the concepts that underpin them, again, very well illustrated by this morning. If young people leave school, or go on to the next stage in school with that, then that will seem to me to be the kind of thing that will be a huge step forward in terms of learning, so that the learning it's not all that stuff we've done then, and then we do the serious stuff when we come to qualifications. This bit has got to give the youngsters the foundations of learning and of understanding and knowledge, which will live with them for the rest of their lives, and that's what the curriculum is intended to do. So conveying that in an exciting way that shows the process you're going through, but don't make it too technical. Don't make it a very long. Don't feel you have to produce something which looks impressive at first glance and then becomes impenetrable once you start to get into it. It's something that should provide the basis for what goes beyond. And if you're talking to inspectors or anyone else, of course you should have the way of going behind what's in the high level document to show what that means, how you've thought that through, why it looks like that. But you don't have to show your working, if you like, in the high level document. You just have to be ready to talk about it to an inspector or anyone else, to show that the substance behind this, it's not just a rhetorical document you produced, it's substance which is going to be given life in terms of what happens in the school. I mean, I think there's really, I keep on saying it, I'm sorry, but I think the opportunity is there. We just must take it. We just must take the opportunity. And if we get it right, we'll have youngsters who are intrinsically satisfied by learning. They don't learn because there's a test. We create learning when it's intrinsically satisfying and it's building progressively as they move forward. And that's what lifelong learning is about. The youngsters move, beyond the stage that we're talking about, and they've got the intrinsic satisfaction, the buzz that you get when you do something difficult and you learn it and they manage to do it. Well, that's actually what learning ought to be in school. Not why am I learning this? It's not in the test. Why are you asking me to do this? That's not really an exam. Why am I learning this? It's designed that's what the what matter statements are designed to do. So, sorry, it's a very long response to your question, Arwen. But essentially, I would say keep it simple, make it inspiring. Have something that if you look at it, you say, wow, if my kids do that, that will be fantastic.
It's a great message there, Graham.